NC Pork, raising the bacon, raising the bar. The 1240 game on Thursday in Providence has another team from the bold North State, the High Point Panthers, as the number 13 seed against the Big Ten's Purdue Boilermakers as the 4 seed. That a 1240 game on True TV. Kerry Keating, Purdue comes out of the Big Ten. They're a pretty good ball club. Do you think High Point has what it takes to maybe pull an upset in this 4-13 matchup?
Well, offensively, the statistics will say that they do. And anytime you pull a team on a draw that's won 14 games in a row, you got to be a little bit weary if you're Matt Painter and the Boilermakers. And it's not like they finished up their season on a strong note. They did play at the top of a very difficult conference in the Big Ten, and obviously have some very dynamic players. In the case of Braden Smith, the best point guard in the entire country. They're going to have that offense on full display. You know, Purdue has traditionally been a physical team, a physical defensive team. I'll say this about Purdue. They like to double team in areas to put you at a disadvantage. They're not great defensively. That is one thing that I do know about Purdue is, you know, when you break their team down, if there is a flaw about Purdue that hasn't traditionally been the case about what you know about Boilermaker teams, is that defensively, they're not as strong as they've been. They don't have a real rim protector. They have youth up front. They consistently get into foul trouble. You know, they struggle to defend on the perimeter. They find themselves having to create different defensive mindsets in different games. And in the case of High Point, it'll be literally, can their offense establish that it's better than Purdue's defense? There'll be a little bit of, as David likes to say, a chess match happening here. How does High Point establish their offense? What adjustments do they force Purdue in? Because that is one thing that Matt is tremendous at and very underrated coach about. Even though that they do have some defensive prowess historically, and that's part of Matt's MO, one thing that he tries to do is make quick adjustments during that game. And I think in tournament games, it's kind of been feast or famine. We saw them lose as, I think, what, a 1 or a 2 seed recently. They've had some monumental upsets, and it's not because necessarily their team wasn't good enough. It's because the matchup presented that they couldn't make the defensive adjustments quick enough. I think in the case of High Point, a really good offensive team, albeit maybe not against the strongest of competition, but when you're winning, you're winning. You can't replace that. And as I mentioned, coming in on a 13, 14 game win streak, winning your conference, taking care of business, and the first time ever. You know, we talked about all the outside ancillary details that can kind of affect these games in the case of the other ACC matches we talked about. This is something also. There's going to be a lot of hype, a lot of excitement. The first time ever for High Point to be in the tournament, you know, go out and represent the right way. This is a very dangerous team from an offensive standpoint. It'll really come down to if they force Purdue to make any defensive adjustments early in the game.
Yeah, Mike, you know the classic line from the movie Dumb and Dumber is, "So you're saying there's a chance." Here's a great fun fact for any High Point fans hoping for an upset here. Not only does High Point have that 14-game winning streak Coach just mentioned, which, by the way, is the second longest of anyone in the 68-team field, Purdue has lost 6 of its last 9 games. They are not playing their best basketball lately, so that should provide at least some hope. The other one, Dumb and Dumber style, is that High Point's greatest strength is a perfect match for Purdue's greatest weakness. And what I mean is, if we looked at all the mid-majors and low majors in the entire country, one of the most efficient offenses, again, outside the power conferences, is the High Point Panthers. Alan Huss, the second-year head coach at High Point, and shout out to him because that school's been in Division I for a little bit more than a quarter century now, and this is that maiden voyage in the NCAA tournament. He won the regular season in the Big South last year and this year. They had a devastating loss in the conference tournament a year ago. Otherwise, that would have been their first trip to the big dance. But Alan Huss is an offensive mastermind, formerly of the Creighton Blue Jays, as a player and as a coach. And they have some similarities in how they play. And he has shared with us on the David Glenn Show how his recruits have to meet certain offensive analytics in addition to some, unselfishness and other, personality traits. And the pieces are fitting nicely. Another thing to remind fans of about this one is that in this new world of the transfer portal and immediate eligibility, the starting point guard at High Point, Keza Jiffa, former JUCO star. The starting guard, Damarian Williams, really good player, formerly of Texas Tech. the best forward, maybe their best player at times, Kamani Hamilton, formerly of Mississippi State. Okay, so like this is talent that has sort of drizzled down from the high majors to be a part of this brilliantly put together mid-major team. And High Point has something very few mid-majors have as well, a 7-footer that can actually play. You might see 7-footers on those rosters, but they're usually bit players, small role players. Jocelyn Bodo is 7 feet tall and 255 pounds, the High Point starting center. He was the Big South Defensive Player of the Year. And oh, by the way, one more guy, Bobby Petterford, their backup point guard at High Point, is formerly of Kansas and East Carolina. I mean, if you're good enough to sign with Kansas out of high school, as with some of these other guys playing in, the Big 12 or otherwise, SEC, this is not your typical mid-major team of yesteryear. It is being built that way more commonly now. But Purdue without Zach Edey, remember that's the 7'4" guy now in the NBA, they're not great defensively. The problem for High Point is Braden Smith, the Purdue point guard, is the Big Ten Player of the Year and might be a first-team All-American. Really good player last year on their Final Four team, even better player this year. And their other all Big Ten first-team guy is Trey Kaufman-Renn, 20-point-per-game guy. Without Edey, they're just brilliant offensively, and Matt Painter obviously is a very respected coach who took them to the title game just 1 year ago. Last fact on this, the best teams that High Point beat this year were North Texas and UAB, neither of which was good enough to make the NCAA tournament. So this is a massive jump in weight class that the Panthers are attempting as they take on Purdue. But those are some of the fun facts. Purdue's been sliding, High Point's been thriving, and Purdue's defense is going to have to try to contain the best offensive team in the Big South and one of the best offensive teams in the entire mid-major ranks.
So, guys, we've talked about Carolina, Louisville, Clemson, High Point, UNC Wilmington. The only team we haven't talked about, the Duke Blue Devils. They, of course, will get the winner of the Mount St. Mary's American game at 2:40 in Raleigh on Friday afternoon. Cooper Flagg gets a little bit of extra time to get that ankle ready to go. We don't know about the status of Malik Brown. He is probably less likely to return anytime soon. Guys, not much of a first round challenge expected right here for the Duke Blue Devils. How much do you play, Kerry Keating, a Cooper Flagg, knowing that you don't need him to win these early games? He might be available, but does that mean necessarily that he's going to be out there playing 20, 25 minutes a game?
Yeah, I don't think you'll see that in game one. The whole thing will be determined on exactly where his health is at. If he's 100% fully cleared, you let him play. You can't play to avoid injuries. You never do that. That's how actually injuries happen. In the case of Duke, they certainly can survive without Cooper in the first round. The second round, obviously, in that 8-9 matchup, whoever comes out of Mississippi State Baylor, a little bit more dicey. You want to have all hands on deck. I think when you look at this in the totality of what could happen and how long he may be out, and we'll know that after the first round comes up, and certainly the question will be asked all the time of John Shire and his training staff. When you look at Duke's bracket, and you start to get teams that you kind of have a feel for in the tournament that could be upsets of the number one seeds. I kind of like Duke's road if I'm Duke, even without Cooper Flagg. They showed that prowess, as we talked about, to have the depth on display in the form of Con Knipple and Tyrese Proctor, Isaiah Evans, and et al. Duke's got a pretty favorable draw, I think. And I think to the point where even if you didn't have Cooper Flagg, if he really wasn't ready to go full strength, if you only had him for, say, 5-10 minutes, or let's go and see how it feels and then let him determine that. Because there's other factors involved in this too. It's just something that you really don't have year to year. Like, he's thinking about a future that's going to garner him hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, that's on the table, the way that this thing is structured right now, where he's headed as the presumptive number one pick. Now, we're living in the present now, and he's still obviously a Duke Blue Devil, but I think that kind of factors in a little bit in terms of decision making. Will he sacrifice one for the other? Doesn't seem to me to be that type of player, be that type of kid. It seems to me like he'd want to be out there and play. He likes to play, right? He likes the competition aspect of it, wants to be a part of it. I don't think you'll see him in the first round. Even if he's ready to play, I think because you need to give maybe a couple extra days to heal on this, and time is the only thing that really heals a sprained ankle. Obviously, to rest, relax, to get your flexion back, to get your strength back. There's really no need to have him out there playing at all. Even if it's just for 5 minutes, it far outweighs the benefit of the rest. I do think that you'll see him in the second round game, depending on whoever comes through and who they play, Mississippi State or Baylor. I think that's the time you'll see Cooper Flagg back out there, a tip for the starting lineup.
Me and the team on the same thing. Stayed down, never switched up. Only thing changed was the game. I'm in the zone now. Nothing can change what we on now. When I pull up, know it's going down. Foot on the gas, ain't no slowing down. Aiming for greatness, no settling. Kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Taking no else, yeah, I gotta win. Watch me kick down the doors, they won't let me in. Who running the game now? Foot on the gas, can slow down. No, my team, we holding it down. We know we running it now. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Watch the game change. Yeah.